What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today I want to talk to you about Lucid. So on Friday, I did bring up this recent news on how Canadians can now order Gravities. So very good stuff. And I brought up as well how 134.5 is very fair, no additional cost. It's pretty much just straight conversion. So Lucid is definitely improving. One thing that I did bring up that could potentially put a wrench in this is tariffs. And so in case you haven't kept up with everything, Trump did hit both Mexico and Canada with a 25% tariff. Both countries did retaliate, I believe, in kind, and everything just got somewhat negotiated and pushed back 1 month. So in 3 weeks from now, we'll be able to find out exactly how that's all going to play out. But given what we've seen so far with Trump, he seems to be very pro just tariffs. And so it is fair to assume that most likely Canada is going to get hit with that 25, or even if it gets lowered down to, let's say, 20% tariff, Canada has already stated that they're going to retaliate in kind. So that does mean that these kind of demand from Canada is going to go poof. Regrettably. So that is going to kind of affect Lucid. In January, they did put out a lot of news saying that they're going to be kind of clearly targeting Canada. So I think the States, they've done a very good job. Same with Saudi Arabia. Europe definitely does need some improvement, but marketing purposes, I think Canada is their next big target. Because if you think about it, logically, it makes sense, right? Like, why it's so easy just to kind of ship up here, or truck essentially. So when it comes down to the whole tariffs, if a 20 or 25% tariff is placed on it, then this is going to be very detrimental. And I get it, some people are going to want to buy it regardless just to have it. But if you think about it though, automotive sector, like price, like elasticity is definitely a big thing. So price makes a big deal. So at least to the general public. But I want to give a quick shout out to this individual, as I've done in the past, Saudi Bay. So he did put in for that video in the comments, well, if you think about it, why not just ship from Saudi Arabia? So I kind of humored it. I looked at it, researched it, and it does logically make sense. So I think no matter what, AMP-2 is going to be the big thing for Lucid. That is going to be their moneymaker, because they are going to be able to ship easily, a lot more cost effective, to all around Europe and essentially all around the world. So it is very advantageous. But I think when it's kind of comical how even if I have all this together, so to AMP-2 might actually have to ship to Canada versus the States, because again, with the tariff, like I think ultimately from Canada to Saudi Arabia, this company is charging between, I think it's 2,000 to 3,500. So not all that bad if you think about it. So if you think or tack on another 3,000, that is significantly less than any potential tariffs. And since it is coming from Saudi Arabia, it would bypass the whole tariff kind of scenario. So as crazy as it sounds, hopefully Lucid is thinking about this, forward thinking, and if tariffs are placed, then they can start to ship vehicles from Saudi Arabia and give that option to Canadians. Let's say if they want it in a timely manner and they don't care about that tariff, then yeah, so be it. They can actually just get it from AMP-1. But I think even potentially as well, that being said, as far as I am aware, still AMP-1 is fulfilling demand for Europe right now, up until AMP-2 really gets its legs going and everything. So with what was stated, I believe on Thursday, European Union might be getting hit with its own set of tariffs, and vice versa, they might hit back. So you never know. I think for the foreseeable future, AMP-2 is going to be the big saving grace for Lucid. And that's actually one thing that I feel Lucid has a very good advantage over, because companies such as Rivian, they're kind of screwed. Like Canadians, Europeans, they won't be buying any like American made vehicles because of potentially the tariffs, right? Again, if Trump is placing a 25% tariff, that doesn't mean anything to Canadians, but usually a lot of the countries like Canada, Europe, and whatever else, they counter that. So them countering that, that is going to be the big negative for these companies such as Lucid. Because like I said, if Trump just places 25%, if I order a vehicle from the States, I don't get hit with any additional tariffs. Nothing. It doesn't affect me. It only affects that country's population for the most part. But yeah, so I just wanted to kind of pop on and go over that. Once again, give a shout out to 𝗖𝗢𝗡𝗘𝗧 for bringing up this kind of mentality. So hopefully, like I said, Lucid is forward thinking about this. I know as far as the questions that are already posed, even if we put something forth right now, it won't get asked like 10 out of 10 times. All the questions that are eventually asked at the time of their earnings is posed on day one. So I feel like that would be a good question for, let's say, an analyst to even ask. What is Lucid trying to think about outside the box if tariffs are like kind of done, or if something is escalated? So yeah, as far as the questions, I think this is very good. Difficult questions. So you have Patrick, Jason, and then 2 from Paul. Based on the complexity of these questions, I feel like Lucid is only going to answer 3. In the past, they've done like 4 or 5. So I think this time around it's only going to be 3. And so first one is associated to revenue, partnerships, and then gravity. And I think ultimately these types of questions do represent exactly what investors feel about Lucid. And because Lucid is very good at talking. For those of you that kind of have been in Lucid for a while, you know they do a lot of fireside chats, a lot of interviews, and they like to talk a lot. And sometimes they don't always fulfill those expectations. And so I think that's kind of a negative sentiment. Recently, this first one right here is about the article, how Lucid wants to do a 80-20 split, but didn't really give much backing on how they're going to be doing that. And even of that 80, how so far we haven't seen anything. And this is ultimately what Jason's question is: with superior battery technology, why are partnerships not being confirmed? So I think ultimately this is why a lot of investors are very disappointed with the previous questions, ever. Like every single time this is always done, it's always been horrible questions. And this type of question should have been answered probably Q1 2024, or better yet, even tail end of Q3, and so, or 2023, I mean, so Q4 2023, because that is a very good question that should have been asked a long time ago. But nonetheless, I'm kind of excited to hear all of this. And so, yeah, let me know your viewpoint on these questions. What's your viewpoint on potentially them targeting Canada for obviously their next big thing to try to get some business out of? But do you think tariffs are going to be a big deal? And do you think that maybe Lucid is already forward thinking about AMP-2 potentially distributing and delivering vehicles to Canada? So what's your thoughts on all that? Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. Hopefully everyone's having an amazing weekend thus far. And one final thing, pop over to my Patreon where I give buy signals on stocks, options, and crypto. Many of them have been absolutely on point and bangers. Definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that, appreciate all of you watching.